Welcome from, I guess we could say this, let's say this, Kansas City. Welcome to this edition of the Houston Roundball Review, Takeover of the Lunch Break, powered by JMNE. I'm, of course, KG Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. And joining me is someone who should be familiar to everyone who is part of the Let's Rage Cougs family, as well as Pod Slamma Jamma. Andy Yanez, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Chris. Loving the atmosphere right here. Like you said, from Kansas City. We're here to cover Houston in the Big 12 Men's Basketball Tournament, who's going to tip off at 6 p.m. Central Time for the quarterfinals of the Big 12 Tournament when they take on BYU, who made the joke yesterday. But we guarantee the Cougs are going to come away with a victory. One of the Cougars are going to come out victorious later today at 6 o'clock. But I'm doing great, Chris. Couldn't be thrilled to get back on here on the Houston Roundball Review Takeover, powered by JM&E. It's been a while. It's been a minute.
It's been a while, and you were one of the first ones to be part of this a long time ago. Before I think the previous platform we used. So, but real quick, today's episode of the Takeover is presented by the Pinto-Leon Law Firm, and the Pinto-Leon Law Firm is also helping out Let's Rage Cougs. But here we go, Pinto-Leon Law Firm. Immigration law, visit website pintoleon.com or give them a call 713-338-2879. Once again, website pintoleon.com, pintoleon.com. Phone number 713-338-2879. All right, Mr. Yanez, before we get into tonight's preview of the Cougs game, the Battle of the Cougars, I'm going to give Andy credit as we're watching on YouTube or, of course, on Roku. I got to get that out there, of course, on Roku, courtesy of the BS3 Network. If you have Roku, simply download the BS3 Network, and you can watch shows like The Takeover and other great content on BS3 TV, the app. If not, you can go to the website bs3tvlive.com or bs3network.com. Last night, after BYU's 20-point win over West Virginia, Andy Yanez asked a question to AJ Dybantsa and head coach Kelvin Young. However, Andy did not give out his affiliation. So you're going to hear his question. Got to get used to that. I did too. It took me a while to get
Andy Yanez, Pod Slamma Jamma. Here's my question.
But here's the question. From you hear Andy's voice, and then you hear AJ Dybantsa's answer, as well as Coach Kelvin Young. And then we get back into more stuff and some news around the conference and the American about Rice women's basketball, etc. Here we go.
Two questions for AJ. What do you feel worked pretty well for you tonight offensively? And then, Coach, any early thoughts on the upcoming matchup against Houston?
Me just staying aggressive. Last time when we were up at West Virginia, I think I was a little passive. And then, they started calling me to be sending me into double teams, and I started getting rallied up, turnovers. So me just trying to stay aggressive and, keep them on their toes.
Yeah, in terms of Houston, great respect for their program, what Coach Sampson's been able to build there. It's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do. I love playing this team because we've got to have the toughness that's required, like that we had tonight. Because that's how those guys play. But they're super aggressive defensively. I thought we played a really good game actually against them at home. We left money on the table. I think we missed 12 free throws in that game, which was really back and forth, really tightly contested game. So it'll be fun to go out there. You want to play against the best. They've had a track record. We're trying to get on to where they have been for a long time. And, we played them in this tournament last year and learned a ton from that game that I think helped us even prepare for them in our first matchup. So we're really looking forward to it.
There you go. You did not hear Andy say his name, Pod Slamma Jamma, etc., but that was his question and answer to Kelvin Young and AJ Dybantsa. Real quickly, Wanda Polk, thank you as always for your support of the Houston Roundball Review and Let's Rage Cougs and Pod Slamma Jamma and me and Andy directly. Thank you for watching today's show. And if you're watching, Andy added his Twitter account, Pod Slamma Jamma Twitter account, so you're also watching on that platform today as well. But your thoughts on what AJ said and Coach Young, specifically about facing our Cougars tonight on ESPN2, 6 o'clock Central.
Yeah, I really focus on Coach Young's comments because I found it kind of the money quote from his answer was that he felt that BYU played really good against Houston, and I agree with him. It was a close game. You know, the final score kind of skewed more towards Houston at the end. The Cougars were able to kind of put it away late, but they gave the Cougars fits in that matchup. Again, it was on the road. It was a true road game for Houston. And ultimately, Houston was just able to execute better late down the stretch. And one of the other tidbits from his conversation, not in that clip, but earlier in his availability after their game last night, was just that he felt the BYU season has kind of been broken up into three parts. Right? There was the team early on in the season where they were healthy. They thought that was going to be what they were going to have all season. Then they had the injuries. They were trying to find their identity, trying to figure out how to play, and now they went on that struggle when they went on their skid, similar to Houston, and that's part of the reason why they were a 10 seed in the Big 12 tournament. We were talking crazy coincidence. We were talking about it yesterday, how BYU is a 10 seed in the Big 12 tournament. They're going to be a 6 seed at least in the NCAA tournament. So they are a very underseeded team here in the Big 12 tournament. Just again goes to show the level of caliber of talent that the Big 12 has. But I think that this is going to be a great game. It's a great test for Houston. I think it's going to be a challenge. Now, it's a neutral site game for Houston, so they're not going to have to face the environment that they had to when they played BYU earlier in the season. But we talked about it in previous, just covered Houston over the previous years, where every time a team faces Houston for the second time, they're used to the physicality, or at least they have something they know, right? Whereas when a team plays Houston for the very, very first time, especially a team like BYU, they had a lot of young players as key pieces. Even though Dybantsa's on a tear, he's going to give Houston fits tonight. But now they have some experience to be able to they know what to expect when they take on Houston later on tonight. I think that'll be interesting, and I agree with Coach Young. I think that they played relatively well. It's just Houston executed better late in that game. I'm curious to see how BYU handles Houston the second time around. And like I mentioned about Dybantsa, he is playing on another level right now. He had 27 points in their win against West Virginia last night. Kennard Davis Jr. had 20. He's going to be an X factor for BYU. If he can do what he did last night against the Mountaineers, that's going to create a lot of headaches for Houston, because in that first meeting, Dybantsa did his thing. Houston was able to kind of hold everyone else in check, especially down the stretch. And if you have multiple role players for BYU going off, that's going to be something that gives Houston problems. But ultimately, for me, what is going to come down for the Cougars is going to be the story of their season. Can Emmanuel Sharp and JoJo Tugler stay out of foul trouble? If those two stay in the game, they're not in foul trouble. I think Houston's the better team. I think Houston is going to be able to execute again, and I think they're going to come out victorious. But if it starts getting called tight, if Emmanuel Sharp picks up 2 early fouls, JoJo Tugler picks up 2 early fouls, that's going to be where we might see Houston get into trouble. And right now, BYU is a pretty hot team.
And let me put this comment up from NRG Texan, and thank you for becoming a Houston Roundball Review YouTube member. Appreciate that as well. It's about to go down. Thanks for bringing the rage to KC, Missouri. It's our pleasure. And we are here from T-Mobile Center as Texas Tech and Iowa State are in the first half. We're not allowed to give play-by-play of the games while we're doing a live stream podcast show, but we can maybe give you a score update here and there. But thank you as well for that, NRG. Hope you like the coverage, and it's going to be more for that inside info for Houston Roundball Review YouTube members as well. I want to say this before we get into. I want to mention the Big 12 News Players of the Year. Those were announced earlier this week. But in the 30 hours we've been here, roughly since we got here yesterday morning, we've seen fans from a lot of schools. We were on the KC streetcar this morning coming over here. Talked to an Iowa State fan. Talked to West Virginia fans. Arizona fans, we've seen them as well. But everyone is talking about how much respect they have for Coach Sampson, how much respect they have for the Houston Cougars program. So just your thoughts on that and the atmosphere. Is this your first time in Kansas City since the regional a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, I haven't been to the last time I was in Kansas City was unfortunately when Nigel Peck and the Miami Hurricanes killed and sent Houston home there in the 2023 season. This is the first conference tournament I've been at since 2023 as well in the American Athletic Conference Tournament. So very different vibe from the American Athletic Conference Tournament. Give credit to the Iowa State fans right now because they're making a lot of noise as the Cyclones are giving them a lot to cheer about. So the atmosphere is great. The city of Kansas City is honestly really... It's a great city. That you mentioned the streetcar, public transportation in Kansas City is very easy to use. A free streetcar, I might add. So that's really been a benefit to us, especially considering what we did when we first got into Kansas City.
Right.
And we had to go on a long hike essentially to get to the hotel we were staying at. But I've enjoyed it so far. 30 hours, great atmosphere, especially around the arena here at T-Mobile Center. It's honestly what you want. It's a sports fan's dream because you walk around. The Big 12 has kind of taken over the little strip right in front of it. They have a lot of different things, activities that honestly they weren't even all open when we walked past. So I'd be curious to see how it looks like when they're all running on all cylinders. Today's a beautiful day here in Kansas City. Sunny, 50 degrees, perfect weather to just be out and about walking. And there's a lot of bars and stuff around city of Kansas City. So even if you're an Arizona fan that's going to play at 2 o'clock, you want to get out here, maybe you don't want to get into the stadium just yet, there's plenty that can keep you entertained around the T-Mobile Center, or you can get on a streetcar, go down and have some barbecue, whatever you might want to see around downtown Kansas City. It's a very, very movable city. I enjoy it so far. And talking about what you said specifically, a lot of Big 12 fans all around. And yes, the respect for head coach Kelvin Sampson and the Houston program is palpable. We had the security guard coming up to
yeah, forgot about that.
The elevator. They
Yep.
saw your shirt, which Houston Roundball review merch. Shameless plug right now. Get your Houston Roundball review merch because they sell the word Houston, and you know exactly who you were affiliated with, who you were covering. First thing they said, Houston. Oh, they got a really good team, and it's cool to be in a place where there's a lot of just basketball fanatics. You mentioned Kansas. The Jayhawks aren't going to play until 8 o'clock tonight, and there's a lot of Kansas fans that are here in attendance. That just goes to show how much basketball fanatics there are, and it's even BYU. I'm seeing a lot of BYU fans scattered throughout the arena. Obviously, we know they're not going to play until 6. It's just a great atmosphere. You're talking specifically about the respect that the Houston Cougars have in the conference. This is barely year 3 in the Big 12, and specifically talking about that Iowa State fan that we met at the streetcar, and talking about just what Kelvin Sampson and has been able to do at U of H and the level of consistency that they've had just in the past 3 years, back-to-back 1 seeds prior to this season. That streak might end this year in the NCAA tournament, but it just goes to show that it extends beyond Houston. And we say this all the time in terms of being where your feet are and really acknowledging the run that Houston's at, because it's special. And it's sobering when you hear outsiders' perspective, or people that are not from the city of Houston recognize that level of success. Because it's a good reminder that, hey, what U of H has been able to do the last handful of years under head coach Kelvin Sampson and staff is special, and it's recognized not just in the city of Houston or not just University of Houston supporters, but throughout the Big 12 Conference and Big 12 supporters of other schools.
Agreed and well said. And since you gave me a great plug segue there while Andy was talking, there are some of the items available at Houston Roundball Review specifically, and really want to get more folks to purchase the Once a Coug, Always a Coug shirt, hoodie, sweatshirt, all those different things. Get that going, get that flying around H-Town. Especially love to see that more at the games. You can scan that QR code there or click on the buttons below the video if you're watching on YouTube. Different ways to support the Houston Roundball Review. And supporting the Houston Roundball Review is also a way to support Let's Rage Cougs. So, because we're all a family. And yes, there will be a Let's Rage Cougs show after tonight's Houston win over BYU. He later start than usual, because we're going to do post-game press conferences and those things
open
as well.
locker room. Open locker room this year.
So we're doing that. So one of us will be at the main press conferences. Another one will be, and one of us will be in the locker rooms getting different comments from Houston Cougars after a victory. And here's another supporter of the another member of the Houston Roundball Review YouTube family. Thank you very much for your support as well. But now I want to get into the postseason awards from the conference. And I guess I want to say this. I want your thoughts on this. Here's the tournament schedule. This is going on right now. This is the action that took place on Tuesday and Wednesday. You know the scores. But more importantly, what everybody we care about today. Right now, Iowa State facing Texas Tech. Arizona against UCF is the next game. And then, of course, the second session today, Houston against BYU, followed by the late game, Kansas and TCU. And as Andy said, the Kansas-TCU game is the late game today. 8:30 start. 12 o'clock, 11:45, 11:30 today. There are already KU fans here in the building. Already.
And a lot. It's not a little bit. It's a lot of them.
It's a lot of Kansas Blue
BYU
already
fans
here.
too.
And yes, I know, it's Kansas, not far, blah, blah, blah. I know it's we're Missouri. But still, they're the late game today, and they're already here. People love Big 12 basketball. I want to say this. We heard they didn't know who we were, but yesterday when we were up here in the press box, a couple of young men, probably Andy's age, took a little dig at Houston Cougar fans and fan support, and really kind of deriding, not expecting a lot of Houston fans to be here this weekend. So what are your thoughts on what they said and what we think some of the reasons are for that, and then going forward, what can be better about it?
Well, there's talking about the respect that there is around the conference in terms of what Kelvin Sampson has done at Houston and the success that they've had. There's a stigma around the University of Houston fan support. And like you said, those people had no idea that we were affiliated with Houston. We were facing towards the court. We had our backs turned to them, but impromptu, they talked about, there's not really a Houston showing. There's not going to be a turnout. And then the comment that really was the money quote is, that's why they have an 8,000 seat stadium. They don't have that many supporters. And that's just a stigma about that. That's going to be the way it's going to be broken is just by flat out showing out and showing the support, which has been shown in stretches. Thinking back to last year in the Final Four, both in the Final Four and most definitely in the championship game. Now, granted, that was in San Antonio, right, for those contests, and it's the Final Four. Of course, you're going to have support for those games. But even thinking back to earlier this season, in football in particular, for the Texas Bowl, again, also local at NRG Stadium. But that crowd was 60, 70, honestly, probably 70% UH fans. It was cool to see the lower bowl at NRG Stadium filled with U of H red. The problem is, and the only answer to your question about how do you break that stigma is just flat out, you got to do it by actions. And there's been a scare of UH fans that we've been able to see throughout leading up, coming into T-Mobile Center. But
yesterday, there were fans here yesterday, Cougar fans here yesterday.
There was a couple that came in on the streetcar when we were coming in earlier today. I don't know if you were able to see them that entered, but compared to other schools, now granted, UH doesn't play till 6 o'clock today, so maybe some of them are traveling. I'd take the guess that there's probably a handful that are traveling. Like you said, we learned the hard way. Apparently Kansas City is the place to be on the second week of March because the flights were not cheap from Houston to Kansas City, especially if you're flying directly from Houston. But the best way I can describe it is that there is the stigma around University of Houston supporters. Because thinking back to the bowl games, right? The reason why, there was noise about whether, maybe U of H would have ended up, granted this is football, but whether U of H would have ended in a bowl game such as the Pop-Tarts Bowl and even in San Antonio, right? When we're talking about the Alamo Bowl. And there was rumor and innuendo that the reason why U of H wasn't chosen for either of those bowls is because the representatives of those bowl games didn't think the UH fans would travel.
Right.
And so, they got the Texas Bowl. UH fans did show out for that. Granted, they were playing LSU. And again, it was in the city of Houston. But there is that stigma. They don't really consider Houston support as one of the top, most definitely not as the top. They kind of see it as minuscule, for lack of a better word. Like, they kind of disrespect the support that UH fans give their program. And the only real way to fight that is to show out. There's not really other way to do it. But it kind of it's interesting from a Houston perspective. It sucks to see that stigma around the University of Houston and supporters and its fan base.
The game is tied now between Texas Tech and Iowa State with about 30 seconds left in the first half. Great game going back and forth. We are doing this show live right now from T-Mobile Center. And Let's Rage Cougars, well, I think we're going to do this, our part of the show tonight from here as well, right? Is that our plan?
Correct. From T-Mobile Center.
So it'll be, 9:30 or so start?
9:30. I would say the latest, probably 10 o'clock.
Yep. Because of 6 o'clock start, and then we're going to do our post-game and then add the content for the show. But join us as Iowa State had a three-pointer at the end of the first half, take a 3-point lead into the locker room. And you can hear the fan support here. It's this Hilton South. There's a whole bunch of Iowa State, what is this? Maroon and gold, their colors, whatever their school colors are. There's a lot of them here inside the arena. And I'm sure Brett Yormark is kind of hoping that they advance as far as possible for TV purposes and money purposes and ticket sales. But back to the Cougs, as you're watching the show on Twitter or on YouTube or on Roku via the BS3 Network, what are your thoughts on the stigma regarding Houston fan support, lack of fan support, ways to improve the attendance? I want to say this is just year 3 for Houston being in the Big 12. So going forward, for fans who have the time and the means, make the Big 12 tournament, plan for it. Put on your calendars roughly the same, the second week in March every year. So plan for it, budget for it, and make it your destination to come here and experience this. That's why I'm here for the first time, to experience it for the first time, see what it's like. And it is very impressive. The vibe around the building, the vibe inside the building, the fans. It is great to see fans from all across the conference, all 16 schools represented here fan-wise. And I was joking with Andy earlier before we got in here. I hope one day we come here and folks recognize who we are. And it'd be cool for folks to say, "Hey, aren't you guys? Hey, you're Kris Gardner from Let's Rage Cougars, or you're Kris Gardner from the Houston Roundball Review, or you're Andy Yanez from Let's Rage Cougars or Paul Samajama." That's one of our things that we aspire to. But Miss Wanda, here's a comment, and this is a legit comment. She believes Houston fans do not put much value in the conference tournament. For the average fan, going to the conference tournament in all the different phases of March Madness becomes expensive. That is very true. That is very true. Andy, what do you think about that?
I think Wanda hit the nail right on the head, and it also goes to show how spoiled Houston fans have become over the course of the past 4 or 5 years, just in terms of they can expect a deep NCAA tournament run. That's kind of where, if you're going to save money, you're going to do it. Nothing against the Big 12 tournament, but at the end of the day, even if Houston wins the Big 12 tournament, all eyes are set for the NCAA tournament, which is crazy to talk about. The Houston fans can expect an NCAA tournament run, but at the end of the day, I think, in terms of how do you combat that narrative, there's not really a solid answer. I guess you could add incentives, but at the end of the day, if people are going to come support Houston in Kansas City, I feel, in my opinion, I'm curious for your thoughts, but I feel like if they are going to make out the trip to Kansas City, I don't think there's any real incentive you can add that'll make or break. Like, I feel like are going to make it a point of emphasis to make it, they're already going to do so regardless of any kind of incentive. In my opinion, I guess the school could help with either different events throughout the city or parks once you get here to Kansas City, and that will help. But ultimately, at least currently, I think it simply is that they have bigger fish to fry.
And let me ask this: if you're watching, as a viewer watching today's show, edition of the Houston Roundball Review, Takeover of the lunch break on Throwback Thursday, and of course today's edition of the Takeover is presented by the Pinto-Leon Law Firm. Thank you for supporting the Houston Roundball Review overall, as well as Let's Rage Cougars. And visit pintoleon.com or call 713-338-2879 Did the school, did UH have a bus for students to come up here this year? Was that ever finalized? I heard it's being well, I don't know.
A
It was
bus to come
discussed
to
by some
Kansas City?
students. Yes.
I haven't heard anything. We'd have to ask Kenneth. You know that Kenneth is here. We'd have to go
Because
ask Kenneth.
one of the couple, well, actually a couple of the, I guess, Daily Cougar staff told me that he was hoping, or they were hoping, that there would be a bus trip up here for the Big 12, but it had not been announced as of, I guess, when we talked about it the first time was women's game senior day so that was March 1st. So as of March 1st,
I did not hear that.
I don't know if anything ever came of it. That would help get some students up here.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's spring break right now at UH. Honestly, I know
No,
it's spring
not.
break.
It is not. Their spring break is next week.
So their spring break is like mine at work. So I took comp time to come up here for the Big 12 tournament for the first time to experience it. So scheduling is part of it, and you got to have the time, you got to have the means, and honestly, the fans who are here from all the schools are older.
Yeah.
So retirees, so that helps as well. And then maybe there are schools around the conference that are also on spring break right now. Who knows? Maybe that also helps. But clearly, the timing is an issue. The money is the issue. Fatigue, spending money on. You got to figure out what can you afford to spend. What do you want to see? Do you want to go to a conference tournament, or do you want to go to the first and second round of the conference tournament, or do you want to go to the Final Four? So all those things are roughly, come here from Dizzy Busy. This week is roughly midterm at school.
Yeah, for a lot of classes it's midterm week too, so that's another factor for kids.
So a lot of different factors of it, and one thing I always say: if you don't have the means, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you may want to go, but it's not in your budget. And in a segue, some things we like to do around travel more, go to more road games, is not in our budget. It's not in our budget for Les Red Cougs, not in our budget for the Houston Roundball Review. That's why we're always thankful for the support we have received and do receive, for this trip. Some of the folks, who helped us on this trip, helped make this trip possible with, their support. So that's always gratifying to get that. And, we're independent. Both of us are independent. Les Red Cougs is independent. Houston Roundball Review is independent. We'd love to have someone underwrite for the year and say, hey, this is your budget for the year. Y'all plan ahead where you want to go. Have at it. That is a goal that we hope to reach and aspire to in the near future. But I want to get to this. I'm going to get the right slide up this time as I switch it over. So bear with me here. Player of the Year in the conference, sir. Were you surprised that Arizona's Jaden Bradley was named Player of the Year? And do you agree with it?
When I first saw it, I was surprised. Now I got a firsthand seat to see Jaden Bradley at his peak when he played Houston a couple weeks ago, and I think he definitely is rewarding of it in terms of when you see how much value he had to that Arizona State team, or he has for that Arizona team, I should say. He's kind of the leader of the Wildcats. He was a calming presence in that game against Houston whenever Houston made that little run. And when you look at his stats, there's nothing eye-popping about it. But I think it's much more respect, one, for Arizona. I think it's also respect for his role and how important he was as a key piece of the best team in the conference in the regular season, at least. Whether I think he's deserving, I think it depends on your criteria. I think they went a lot. This is decided by the coaches, correct?
Right. Correct.
Around the 12.
Correct.
So I think they kind of went on the most important player on the best team. Similar in many ways to when Jamal Shead won it a couple seasons ago for Houston. Now, granted, Jamal Shead was also the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and he was clearly not only the most important, but he was the important player for Houston in that season. I think where you're looking at stat-wise, there's obviously a lot of different players that have more eye-popping numbers that catch your eyes. Talking about BYU's AJ Dybantsa, he's the first one that comes to mind. But I think it was much more in terms of respect and ultimately rewarding the most important player on the best team in the calendar year for the Big 12. I think that's why he got named. Whether I agree with that or not,
It's a coach's vote. Because I think you asked the media vote differently. Just busy with comment. Bradley's really good, but AJ's the best player, put in the better numbers. And similarly, I'm going to shift to Rice women's basketball real quick because similarly, they got a Player of the Year. Victoria Flores named American Conference Player of the Year. Now, Rice women went 17-1 in the conference. I'm going to pull up her stats. So give me a second here. Pull up her stats, and you might think the same thing. These are her stats. 14.1 points per game, 38% from the floor, 35% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. That was named Conference Player of the Year. Coach's vote as well. This is a coach's vote in the American also.
Yeah.
So you see coaches vote differently. They emphasize winning and best player, most valuable player on the best team.
Yeah.
So Victoria Flores for Rice was the most valuable player for Rice. I think Jaden Bradley is the most valuable player for Arizona. Arizona's the best team in the conference. And Jaden Bradley was named Big 12 Player of the Year. I think that's the rationale, the reason behind the coaches doing it. I think if we voted, I'd have voted for AJ Dybantsa. But I think we even discussed this in a previous Let's Rate Cougs show, and we came up through our different names. We did toss out Jaden Bradley, but one of the reasons was because best player on the best team.
Well, and then I think you also have to take into account JT Tulipin's injury. I think if he's healthy and he finishes the stretch for Texas Tech, maybe he gets a nod instead of Bradley. I think comparing specifically Dybantsa and Bradley, going from a coach's perspective, it's kind of more like this award carries a little bit more weight. I can see a lot of coaches just not voting for AJ simply because he's a freshman.
That is also a part of it as well.
Also, rewarding the best team. So I looking at it from the coach's lens, I know why they voted for Bradley. If you're looking at it from a purely statistical standpoint, he wasn't the best player in the conference. But again, you're rewarding the best team and the most important player on that team, who was Bradley. And like I said, you got to see him up close and personal when they played Houston. And he was a big reason why they were able to pull away late against Houston. He was very calm presence in that game in a hostile environment.
And bottom of the hour on today's edition of the Houston Roundball Review, Takeover of the Lunch Break. The Lunch Break is powered by JM&E, but today's edition of Takeover is also presented by the Pinto-Leon Law Firm. This website, pintoleon.com. Call 713-338-2879. Once again, pintoleon.com. Call 713-338-2879. Bottom of the hour, today's Takeover. Going to give more info about what BS3 Network is all about, and we'll be back in 90 seconds. And then we're going to talk more about the rest of the Big 12 postseason awards. Stick and stay with me, KD Kris Gardner, and Andy Yanez on today's edition of the Houston Roundball Review Takeover.
BS3 Network, changing the way you watch TV.
Welcome back to today's edition of the Houston Roundball Review Takeover of the Lunch Break, powered by JM&E. I'm, of course, KG Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. And with me is my colleague, travel partner, young lion, Andy Yanez from Pod Slamma Jamma, and, of course, Let's Rage Cougs. We're talking Big 12 postseason awards. Let's get back into it. And then we're going to close it out. I want to get your thoughts on this, Andy, as well as our viewers watching on Twitter, Roku, YouTube, Facebook, about Miami of Ohio losing for the first time this season to 8th seed in their conference tournament to UMass, and should they be in the tournament? But before we get to that discussion, wrap up today's show, let's finish up with the Big 12 postseason awards, men's basketball. Kansas' Flores Badunga, Defensive Player of the Year. Melvin Council Jr., newcomer. Tama Lipsey, Scholar Athlete. AJ Dybantsa, Freshman of the Year. Texas Tech's Christian Anderson, Most Improved. And, of course, Toby Owaka, six-man from Arizona. And, naturally, head coach Tommy Lloyd, the Big 12 Conference Coach of the Year. Well, right before I get back to the slide, any issues with the rest of those winners?
Not really.
I mean, do you agree with AJ being Freshman of the Year over Kingston Flemings?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he's had more of an impact, and honestly, not more of an impact. He's had, like, going back to the argument we were just talking about, Bradley. His stats are better. I think he's been more consistent for the most part throughout the season, and Kingston kind of had a little bit of that slump towards the tail end of the season. Now, Kingston has obviously had his moments. He had some eye-popping numbers, and granted, maybe in any other year he would have been head and shoulders freshman of the year. But Dybantsa has been phenomenal all year long, and he's been much more consistent on my end, in my opinion. So I don't have a problem with him getting the nod over Flemings.
All right, now we'll get into some more details about each winner, and then we'll close it out in a few minutes. But Jaden Bradley is the third Arizona player in the past 5 seasons to be named Conference Player of the Year, but the first to earn the honor in the Wildcats 2 seasons in the Big 12, which we know. And there's a number you're talking about, Andy. Bradley averaged 13.4 points and 4.6 assists to lead his team to an 18-2 record. We know that 13.4 points is almost half of what AJ Dybantsa scored points per game. But he had key 25-plus point performances in wins at BYU and Baylor, which proved key for Arizona's title chances. Flores Badunga is the ninth Kansas player. That's impressive. The ninth Kansas player to earn the league's top defensive honor, and the first since DeJuan Harris in 2023. Badunga had a league-leading 2.7 blocks per game, helping Kansas to hold its opponents to a 38.7% field goal percentage, the best in the conference. Offensively, he adds 13.8 points per game to go along with 9 rebounds. Lipsey is the 4th Scholar Athlete of the Year from Iowa State and the first for the Cyclones since 2018-19. He averaged 13.3 points, 3.73 GPA. That's impressive to me. It's more than what I had at UH, but I'm not going to say about how much more, but that is more than what I had at UH. In a year with the storylines centered around a deep and talented freshman class, Dybantsa emerged as the Big 12's best, becoming the first from BYU to earn the award in the program's 3 seasons in the league. Dybantsa averages an NCAA leading 24.7 points per game, which is on track to be a top 5 mark in the history of the Big 12. Go back to your point. Why wasn't he named player of the Year of the conference with info like that? Top 5 mark in the history of the Big 12.
Because he's a freshman.
Yeah. Melvin Council Jr. is Jayhawks' 4th Big 12 Newcomer of the Year and second honoree in the past 3 seasons. He averaged 13.4 points and 4.9 rebounds while becoming a fan favorite for his senior leadership. The St. Bonaventure transfer ranks among the conference's top 10 in both assists per game at 5.2 and assist to turnover ratio 2.9. Owaka was the nation's leading rebounder off the bench, averaging 9.7 rebounds and 9.9 points when entering the game as a reserve. Owaka reached double-digit rebounds in 8 Big 12 games. He is the first Arizona player to win 6-man award in the Big 12. And as we're doing today's show, Iowa State is ahead of Texas Tech by 7 with 18 minutes to go in the second half. Now about 4.
Make it 4.
Christian Anderson doubled his scoring average, going from 10.6 points to 19.2 points this season to earn the Most Improved award. Anderson ranks third in Division I with assists, 7.8 assists per game, and represented Texas Tech's next man-up mentality after the injury to J.T. Toppin, scoring 20-plus points in 3 of the 5 games since J.T.'s injury. He is the first Red Raider to capture the award since its institution for the 2019-2020 season. Coach Lloyd, as we all know, Houston fans know, led Arizona to its first Big 12 regular season title, navigating the nation's toughest league with a 16-2 record. The 2022 AP National Coach of the Year earned his first honor in the Big 12 Conference while amassing 141 wins in the first 5 seasons of his career, the most of any coach in NCAA Division I history. That is also impressive. And then we'll wrap it up. See, Anthony, I see your comment. We'll get to that in a question. We'll get to that as well as we wrap up today's edition of Takeover. Andy, I know your thoughts on this, but a all-conference team with 10 members or however many, I hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, just go have a first, second,
And
third team.
it's also, I mean, yeah, it's funny. It's funny because, they basically have a full squad for the first team, and then the second team, they're like, no, we'll go to 5. That's funny. But, it kind of connects with what we were talking about yesterday in terms of nowadays, they're trying to, I'm gonna sound like I'm old. It was my birthday yesterday. They're just trying to include a lot of people, trying to give out as many awards as possible, and talking about how did they phrase it in the email that you read yesterday, Chris? The
non-advancing team.
The non-advancing team, right? Maybe in previous years, the losing team will go after, but. Ultimately, it's just a conference trying to reward as many people as possible and trying to get their names out there. Now, granted, the conference is a little bigger than maybe in previous years, so I guess you can make the argument that it makes sense in that aspect. But I agree with you, Chris. If you're going to do that, like, if the second team is 5, the first team should be 5, in my opinion. Yeah. And even if you have to add another team, right? If you want to
like a 4th team, because I think I did this right. They have a 3rd team, don't they? Yeah, they do.
Yes, they do. They have a 3rd team. So if you want to add a 4th team to reward as many players as possible, that makes sense. But I think it kind of takes away a little bit about being named first team. But if you go back to the previous slide real quick, in terms of all Big 12 first team, and specifically focusing on the Houston perspective, Kingston Flemings and Emmanuel Sharp are obviously the Cougars that made it on the all Big 12 first team. I think this goes to show the level of respect that Kingston Flemings has around the league in terms of him being a unanimous selection amongst coaches. I think that's big time. There's a handful, right? You say AJ Dybantsa, Flemings, and JT Toppin, the only unanimous selections for all Big 12 first team. See, those 3 would have been all Big 12 first team even if they had 5.
Yeah.
So that big kudos to them, especially for Flemings as a freshman. Again, the level of respect that really coaches around the league have for him and what he was able to do at Houston in his freshman season.
And to round it out, let's see, we got the 3rd team. Even have honorable mention as well. And that's why we have JoJo Tugler and Milos Uzan.
Which honorable mention? I'm curious. What? Yeah. Why was? Okay.
And then we got the all defensive team as well, and all freshman team, and all newcomer team, and on and on and on. So a lot of acknowledgement for your players. So it's nice and all.
Which is what they want.
Yeah,
right?
That's what they want.
I wonder how they decided on JoJo Tugler. I don't want to sound like a douche, but it's just beyond a big. JoJo Tugler has been very inconsistent this season. So I don't know. I'm curious how they came up with all mentions. What are your thoughts on that?
I was surprised JoJo made it. We watch him all the time. He's still respected for
defense.
Kind of what did last year, but okay.
Yes, he's got a reputation. he has even the man that we ran into on
Yeah.
the streetcar. Right? The only player he mentioned from Houston was JoJo Tugler, and he said he admires how he plays. Which again, he don't take away anything from the potential that he can do. He's a great player, and in the last 3 games of the regular season, he showcased like, okay, that's a JoJo Tugler that we thought we were get for the course of the entire season. The problem he hasn't been there. Now, we've talked about it all year long. If you're new to the show, we covered Houston all season long. We know that he dealt with injuries before the season even began. Basically sat out most of October. He's just been very inconsistent, especially during that 3-game losing skid. Now, when he's on the court, for the most part, he is an overwhelming majority of the time. He has been a strong asset for Houston, and that's why it's frustrating when he gets in foul trouble, because that's when Houston kind of tends to struggle a little bit, especially on some defensive possessions. In my opinion, I think it's been a little inconsistent. But like you said, I think it's much more to level of respect, not only for Tugler, but also Houston as a whole.
Give your stat again about JoJo when he scored double figures for Houston.
That Houston is 12-0 when JoJo Tugler scores in double figures for the Cougars. 12-0. He's a very important piece to Houston. Just this year, he's been a struggle in terms of staying on the court because of foul trouble. Sometimes the fouls that he commits could be a little boneheaded, but he's done a much better job. 3 games, I think there's no coincidence that Houston has been 3-0 in those games. What was it? It was the Baylor game. It was the Baylor game where he picked up 2 early fouls at the beginning. I think it was Colorado or Baylor. And I think it was Baylor because, Bears had command of that first half. And then second half turned around. JoJo Tugler doesn't commit any fouls in the second half, stays on the court, and Houston kind of runs away against Baylor and wins by a comfortable margin. Again, that's not a coincidence. That shows how impactful and important Tugler is to the team. So I guess now that I've talked, maybe I've talked myself into, okay, now I can kind of see why they gave him the honorable mention. But he's, there's been a little bit of the foul troubles kind of gotten him in issues so far this season. And I think maybe compared to years past, he's maybe a little bit more inconsistent than you would like, especially considering what he did last year, being named the Big 12 All-Defensive Player of the Year, and hasn't been able to have quite that same impact this season.
Well, let's do this. 3 things we'll touch on before we close out today's edition of the Takeover. Coach Sampson said in the press conference, he said, if I knew how I could get JoJo to avoid foul trouble, I would.
Yeah,
he
that's
said
been
that.
the puzzle they've been trying to solve most of the season.
Yeah. Okay. The Caleb Holt thing. Caleb Holt committed to Arizona. One of the top unsigned guards remaining in the class of 26. Not a surprise. I was surprised he took this long to decide. The longer he took to decide, I kind of thought Houston still had a chance, even though they weren't no longer listed really among the insiders. But there are other reasons behind it, and I might delve into a few of those later on. But I'm not surprised he chose Arizona. It was Arizona, Alabama, and Houston. And Arizona, Alabama kind of had taken the lead the last few weeks. And you kind of visualize, understand what I'm saying when I say kind of taking the lead in that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a hell of a player. He's a hell of a guard. He reminds me of a Jamal Shed type player. He's not a great shooter yet, but he's a winner. That young man wins. Every team he plays for wins. He finds ways to help his team win. Next, Andy, your thoughts on the glass floor, the LED, and the stats we're seeing here at the Big 12 tournament?
It's cool in principle. I think, they listened, not we didn't say anywhere, obviously it wasn't us, but they decided, as they put up Joshua Jefferson's stats on the screen right now while he's shooting free throws, it's pretty cool to look at. I think there's a couple things they could do in terms of the color of the court that maybe makes those stats a little bit more eye-popping. I wonder why they chose the black, gray, charcoal. They added the logos to the teams for the quarterfinals, which we talked about yesterday. It looked kind of bland a little bit. I had a chance to take one step on the court before security kicked me out right before one of the games yesterday. I don't know. There hasn't been that many slippage issues. At least not yesterday. There weren't that many slippage issues. I mean, it seems fine. It looks a little weird when you first look at it from a distance, but it's cool in principle. They have a lot of different cool things they can do with them, especially for team introductions. They have the names of the players being introduced. They have cool graphics. But I'd see it more as a novelty as anything. You know, I don't see this taking over basketball courts around the country anytime soon. I think it's more of a novelty. And at the end of the day, it's the Big 12 cashing in on an opportunity because I'm sure they got a big payday for using it. They even got a big sponsor in Windex. Well, you know, I probably shouldn't have said their name, but they got a big sponsor in them for sponsoring the court. So at the end of the day, it's good for the conference financially, which for a Big 12 tournament where the Big 12 is trying to differentiate themselves and make the most revenue for their participating schools, it's good in that aspect. But again, I still think it's more of a novelty than anything.
It's new. It's what? How did the press release say it? It's like a disruptor as well. But your market is all trying to disrupt the business landscape. I think it's good. It could be good. It's good for the sponsors when they play I guess play is the right word, showcase the company during a break for the Big 12 corporate sponsors. They show that on the floor. So that's a different way to reach out for your platform or your business. Iowa State's on a run now. They're now up 14 over Texas Tech. But it's about to call timeout.
Yeah.
Closing moments.
Iowa State fans
Andy, 31-1.
You look at those Cyclones.
Miami, Ohio. Miami of Ohio lost in the opening round. I guess opening round. They lost to the 8th seed today in the conference tournament. Should they still get an at-large berth in the NCAA men's tournament? Had a perfect regular season, 31-0, but did not play elite competition through no fault of their own, apparently, because a lot of teams did not want to schedule them. But do they still, in your opinion, do they deserve at-large berth?
Yes. 31-1. I don't care who you're playing. 31-1. Now I'm going to sound like a broken record because something Kelvin Sampson says all the time, but it's hard to win a game. And I can attest to that, how hard it is to win.
Coach Yanez can attest, yes.
I don't care who the opponent is. You know, it doesn't matter what conference that you're in, what level of competition you're in, to win 31 games in a row, to go undefeated in the regular season, that's hard to do. It doesn't matter who the opponents are. And I think ultimately you should be rewarded for winning. And I don't think one bad game in a conference tournament should ultimately trump anything in terms of the regular season. I think the regular season body of work should carry more weight than one bad game in March. Now, granted, I say all that, and they're probably going to get demolished by whoever they play in the first round if they do get an at-large bid. But in my opinion, you should reward the regular season at-large body of work. 31-0 is 31-0, and that should be rewarded in my opinion.
And that's how I feel. I'm going to kind of contradict myself when I brag so much on how much we are enjoying the Big 12 tournament here in Kansas City, the Big 12 tournament championship. It's great, but it's a money grab. It's a money grab for the corporate sponsors. It's a way to showcase the sponsorship, say thank you to your sponsors and all those great things. But it should not detract from the regular season. You go undefeated in the regular season. You win your regular season conference, which is, 18 or 20 games. Mm-hmm. One bad day in a 3-day tournament experience should not negate you from being in a tournament. That's my opinion of it. Okay. I mean, I'm okay with, and this really sounds kind of contrarian, if they don't have conference tournament championships, just have a regular season You play 31, 33 games. Hell, play 40 games. Play more games. Whatever. You win your regular season. And then that is your automatic berth to the tournament, winning your regular season. That's what I think ultimately it should be. It won't be. That ship has sailed and sunk. But that's what I think. That's what I would prefer. So we're going to close it out on today's edition of the Takeover. Mr. Yanez, who are you again, and how can folks follow you on social media?
Yes, sir. Who am I? I'm Andy Yanez with Potsdam Jamba. I'm going to make that a point of emphasis today. If I ask a question on the dais on the press conference room today, I got to get used to that. But people can follow me on X at @Yanez_5, on Instagram, TikTok, and X as well, the Potsdam Jama channel. So on X, it's at Potsdam Jama, PAWDSLAMAJAMA. And on Instagram and TikTok, it's Let's Rage Cougs, all lowercase, no extra special symbols or anything, just Let's Rage Cougs. On both Instagram and TikTok, we'll have coverage throughout tonight here in Kansas City as Houston takes on the court. 6 p.m. tip-off against BYU in their quarterfinal matchup here in the Big 12 tournament. Follow us on YouTube, Pod Slamma Jamma, same like it was on X. Subscribe if you haven't done so. If you're new to the channel, to any of the platforms, maybe you've never seen it before, Pod Slamma Jamma on YouTube. We'll have locker room coverage. We'll have post-game coverage regardless of what happens between BYU and Houston following this quarterfinals matchup here from Kansas City in the Big 12 tournament.
And two things real quick. Thank you once again to the Pinto-Leon Law Firm for being a presenter of today's show. Pinto-Leon.com, 713-338-2879. Once again, 713-338-2879. If you want to join them, part of being, this is a membership I was referencing earlier. For YouTube members, we get info earlier, inside info that I may not even release publicly. First, sometimes I do post videos like my video interview with Jamal Shed. The members saw it first, and then I made that public the next day. But I did not publicize my second video with Jamal. That is still just for YouTube members only. So you can have two tiers to join. If you want to do it just for this month of March, your choice there. $2.99 all league tier, all world, $4.99. So different ways to support the Houston Roundball Review. And then that'll do it. Salute to the Pinto-Leon Law Firm again. Join me, and Andy, and Dayon, and Fluff this evening for the next edition of Let's Rage Cougs here on this YouTube channel of Houston Roundball Review. Pod Slamma Jamma on YouTube. Pod Slamma Jamma on Twitter. Thank you. We're going to discuss it, dissect it, what we expect to be another Houston Cougars win this year. So join us tonight, 9:30 roughly, approximately, for the post-game show, Let's Rage Cougs. And we're going to have an Iowa State fan probably watch because he said he asked about what we do, and we told him, and he said he would look us up. So thank you to him as well. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Tip-off between the Cougars, our Cougars, and those other Cougars, 6 o'clock, ESPN2, 6 o'clock Central Time. And we'll see you in a few hours. Everyone, take care. And y'all know this. Always remember this. Since 1994, the Houston Roundball Review. Local name, global perspective. Take care. Peace.